Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome back to the next Eternal Reviews. Today we're gonna start the multi-faction cards with Praxis, so this is gonna be shorter than the last ones, but since I'm gonna do one faction pair per video to wrap up the review series. Alright, so let's get started. Not much needed to say about the Praxis banner. The first noteworthy card we have is Alluring Ember. The card's kinda weird, since first of all, it usually takes until like turn 3 or even turn 5 to play this, and 3 or turn 4 to play this, and even on turn 4 you sometimes can't if you don't have perfect influence. But yeah, every time you draw a seed or a banner, you should be able to play this on 3 or 4. But yeah, then all you get is a 1/1 flying charge that is free if it's on top of your deck. So if it's on top of your deck, it's fine. You basically get a 1/1 flying charge that draws your card effectively, kind of like a Temple Scribe. But the problem is the restrictions are so hard, and the restrictions on when it actually is free, basically only that exact turn that it's on top of our deck, make it pretty bad. I think the card is probably pretty bad and constructed unless you can somehow kind of abuse it, but I tried to make some warp stuff work and get this for free and stuff and play Workshop Forge, and it just doesn't seem to work. I don't think the card is good enough for constructed. And in limited, it's similar. The heavy restrictions are even more problematic in limited. The impact is still pretty low, but it's a bit better in limited since the flying matters more, and yeah, if it's free, that also has higher impact in limited than in constructed. But yeah, in both formats, not happy about the card. Next we have Noble Firemane. This is kind of interesting, like Praxis really needed a good 2-drop. Unfortunately it didn't get one, because while this guy is solid, the fact that it's a 2/2 hold it back a lot. Like if this was a 2/3, I would be totally happy, and I think that would be reasonable for like two factions to make it a 2/3. Because then it actually would block reasonably well. I mean, look at Kassan. Kassan is a 2/3 and has endurance and has a great ultimate. Sure, he's a legendary and all, but for an uncommon, making this a 2/3 with no battle skill and just this ability would have made it a good uncommon, but not even super good or anything, and would have finally given Praxis that like 2-drop that has bought impact on turn 2 other than trading with 1-drops. So yeah, right now this guy seems to have some issues in constructed, in the sense that the decks that want a 2-drop, it doesn't do enough, and other decks where it might be okay, it's where it might be fine stat-wise, it doesn't fit and stuff. So yeah, I don't really know what to do with this guy. He doesn't really fit in Praxis mid-range. I think Praxis tokens also doesn't really want it, because it has enough better to do, but in Praxis tokens he might actually be good. I didn't really get around to try him there. Maybe I should try him in a dedicated token deck, maybe he's strong enough there, because the ability definitely can be nice. But yeah, a 2/2/2 just feels pretty bad and constructed. They usually need to be 2/3, 3/2, like even 3/2 is not that good, like 2/3, 3/3, or like if they are 2/2 have some good ability like Aegis or say Warcry quick draw, like Outlaw and stuff like that. And the Praxis decks are not aggressive enough usually to want Outlaw, because that obviously only works when you're aggressive and have combat tricks and weapons to enhance it. And yeah, limited is a great 2-drop, since a 2/2 for 2 is totally fine and limited, and the ability can break a game later. So nice pickup for limited. Champion of Impulse. Pretty good champion. Sort of what I would have wished Champion of Chaos would have become after the nerf. A 4/4 at 3, if you can turn him on. And even sort of better, easier than Champion of Chaos, because if Champion of Chaos would have become a 4/4, it would have been a 3/4 on turn 3. This is straight up a 4/4 on turn 3 if you turn it on, so that's really nice. And the ramp ability turned out more relevant than I initially thought. It helps you ramp into these Shatter Glass Mages and Heart of the Vaults a turn earlier, especially when they're on top of your deck, so this is a really nice bonus. But yeah, usually you're gonna be heavy time and make sure that he's a 4/4 on 3, and the rest is kind of like a bonus that happens occasionally. And yeah, limited is also pretty good. Next we have Journeyman Armorer. Once again, I think constructed not good enough, just too weak, too situational. Warp doesn't make up for how bad it is. But yeah, in limited this is actually pretty solid, because basically getting 3/3 in stats for 3 is pretty solid, and you are reasonably likely to have some random 2-drop or something to put the weapon on, so that it actually is a 3 stats for 3. And the warp also, like I said, warp is very much a limited mechanic, since the extra card impact in limited is much bigger when decks are not as streamlined. So in limited I think this is a pretty solid card, in constructed it's pretty bad. Next we have Purify. It's kind of okay in constructed. I think people are overhyping the card a bit. My problem with the card is that you still kinda wanna be able to kill the unit that you target, because otherwise you have a 3 power instant speed, like fast spell speed silence, which is usually not worth the investment of a card, also not worth the investment of 3 power. And if you kill it, if the unit had 3 health to begin with, then you kind of just wasting the silence part, so you basically have a 3 power torch that only targets units, which is my problem. Like, the card is kind of like a bit clunky and the parts don't interact that well with each other. It mostly is really good when you basically silence something to make it 3 health and then dies to the 3 damage. Like, for example, this is a nice answer for Champion of Impulse, because this actually turns into a 2/2 and then dies. But there's not a lot of units where this happens. This can happen against a Warcried Champion of Glory as well, and some stuff, but yeah, all in all, this card's pretty mediocre, and so far I didn't feel the urge to put it in my Praxis decks, because I think there's better options. Like, I'd rather play Archive Curator in my Praxis deck than Purify usually. In limited, of course, it's great. Any spell speed removal that deals with annoying stuff and can at worst be a silence against bigger bombs is definitely great. But yeah, in constructed it's lacking. Next we have Brilliant Discovery, another bad warp card in my opinion, since 4 power to draw 2 sigils, not even put them in play, and just warp to make up for it. It's just so slow and so bad. I don't think this card is playable. Like, you can usually just not afford to skip an entire turn to draw 2 power. That's just too slow, too clunky. Even in limited I think this is not great, but in a slow defensive limited deck it can be fine, because it draws you effectively up to 2 or 3 cards if you get to warp it, and both power cards are relevant for you, and they can also help fixing a bit. But yeah, still underwhelming. Next we have Clever Stranger. A great Stranger in limited, especially in a Stranger heavy deck, thanks to the warp. And in constructed there might be some potential. I tried to break this together with Workshop Forge in a low drop Stranger heavy deck, but it was pretty inconsistent and underwhelming. I don't know, I don't really think it's gonna work, but it's definitely a card that has some busted potential under the right circumstances, so who knows, maybe in the future this will do some powerful stuff. But right now, 4 power 2/2 warp that gives warp to strangers has not impressed me enough. Next we have Diogo Malaga, another card that I think is overhyped and really bad. The charge on a 3/5 4-drop is pretty irrelevant. The double fire is awkward in a deck that wants triple time for champion. The ability is super slow, has no board impact, is very speculative. In my experience this guy is usually like a double fire time 3/5 for 4 with no relevant text, because the game often ends before this happens, and even after this happens the game might end before this has impact, and the charge on the 3/5 is just hardly ever relevant. I think this card is kind of like, yeah, weirdly designed and not a good card. Don't put this in your Praxis decks. There's a million better 4-drops in the colors. And yeah, I mean, in limited it's still good, like a 4 power 3/5 charge is pretty solid in limited, and the ultimate can sometimes win you the game, but the cost is still restrictive. It's not great in limited, I think, but it's like a solid card at least. Next we have Shatterglass Mage. I keep being more and more impressed by this card. I think this guy is very main deckable and pretty good. The combination of warp and killing an attachment makes this usually at least a 2-for-1, sometimes a 3-for-1, because often you can either warp it or kill an attachment, and sometimes you can do both. And the fact that it has 5 attack means it triggers Dawnwalker and Friendly Wisp, while also trading with a lot more than, say, a Furnace Mage would. So, all in all, I've been pretty impressed with this card. I think this is a really good card for bigger Praxis decks in Constructed, and in Limited it's also a really good card. It's a bit fragile, but still has a lot of value potential and is reasonably big. Dusthoof Brawler has come a long way in this card. Next we have Talia's Choice. I'm quite underwhelmed by this card. I think it's way too expensive, and also it's not even a fast spell. So this is like a really bad rally. First of all, the 2 damage to face are super irrelevant. I rather wish this card would cost 4 and not deal 2 damage. Then I would be much happier with this card, and if it was a fast spell. And then you get a Sorcery Speed Rally, and we all know Sorcery Speed Rally for 5 is a lot worse than actual Rally for 3, and even actual Rally for 3 is only good in certain situations in certain decks. And the other half, getting 2 1/1s and 2 health for 5, especially as a spell, not a fast spell, is very underwhelming as well. I think this card is extremely overcosted and underpowered and has effects attached that are kind of irrelevant. The damage and the health gain is just like... I wish the card would cost 1 or 2 less and not have the life damage part. That would be reasonable. Like a sorcery rally that alternatively can make you 2 guys, so basically a sorcery speed choice between a bad assembly line and a bad rally would make for an interesting card because of the choice. It's still worse than rally or assembly line, but nice because it can be whichever of the 2 your go wide deck needs. But the way this card is, like, no, just no. Sorry. And even in limited, I don't usually want to see this in my deck. This card is just a disappointment all over the place. Workshop Forge, yeah, not much to say. No board impact, costs 5. Warp doesn't really help it. And most of the warp cards are so weak and so low impact that getting them in play cheap or for free still is not gonna do enough. I tried to brew a Workshop Forge warp deck to like flood the board with warp cards and draw my deck, sort of put my deck into play for cheap, and it just didn't do enough. Most of the warp cards are just so bad that even if they cost hardly any power or a card, they're still not gonna impact the game well enough, aside from like Shatterglass Mage and Heart of the Vault. These are like 2 of the very few good warp cards. So yeah, this card's just... I mean, maybe we'll see enough good warp cards in the future that this becomes good at some point, but right now you're mostly just vomiting out crap and still lose to any like deck with proper cards that just outclass everything you do by miles. And next we have Heart of the Vault. This card is just pushed to the limit. Couldn't be any better than it is. The 6/6 for 6 is already really good. The fact that it can be for free with warp makes it even better, and even if you don't warp it, you still can potentially kill a small thing of your opponent or pop an Aegis or kill a relic weapon, and you're gonna draw a card, and the card you draw is gonna be 2 cheaper, so sometimes you'll draw like a cheap removal that you can play right away and so on. The card generates up to a 4 for 1 and potentially makes a cheap spell free or an expensive spell cheaper. And provides like a 6/6 for 6. It's just, the card is just incredible. Not much else to say here. Then we have Sandglass Sentinel. 7 power, 3/6 Overwhelm. Not very exciting, clearly not a constructed card, but even in limited, not a fan. When you play a spell, Sandglass Sentinel gets +3 attack this turn, which is really weird that this ability is in Praxis. I would have expected something like this in Skycrack, but apparently this thing, this like spell-based stuff, is a Praxis thing, so Fevered Scout actually is a Praxis card, not a Skycrack card like everyone thought, I assume, which is really weird. Especially because I think Praxis is really bad at using these cards compared to Skycrack, so I don't get it. So yeah, in limited, there's like better cards like the 7 power 7/7 that gets Overwhelmed with Empower, which is a million times better than this. So yeah, this is even a bad card in limited, a bad 7-drop. I don't want this in anywhere near any deck, basically. And last but not least, while we talked about Praxis being the spell faction, apparently, we have this bad card that we know from the event. Getting 2 Sentinels equal to, with attack and health equal to the number of spells in our void for 8 is really bad, because, you know, we need like 5+ spells for this to be reasonable. Since, I mean, compare this to like Great Parliament or Shimmer Pack, for example, for like other legendaries, and I think like Great Parliament gives us 2 4/4 flyers at 8 for half the cost, and like Shimmer Pack just upgrades all our crap and is a 4/4 for 8. So both are like a million times better, and you need at least like 1 or 2 spells, 5 or 6 spells in the void, I think, for this to be half decent, and then it's only half decent. It's just a disappointment through and through, this card. I feel like kind of trolled by this card, honestly. Plus, in Praxis you don't, unlike in Skycrack, in Praxis you don't even have echo spells, so it's even harder to get all these spells together. Like, I don't get how Praxis is this spell faction. It just doesn't make any sense to me. The faction has so few spells and so few generic spells that you can just put in a deck to like throw them away, like cycle spells and cheap stuff that you can proactively use to make cards like this good. I don't see it. Card is just unplayable. Well, that rounds out the review for Praxis today. Tune back in tomorrow for the horror cards, as you can see. And as usual, if you want to support the channel and my content, check out the donation link in the description down below. You can also find my social media there, or on the screen here on the right, actually on the left from your perspective, so confusing. And yeah, if you found this interesting, entertaining and or helpful, please consider to like and subscribe to the channel to help the channel grow, and let me know in the comments what you guys think about the cards, and if and where you disagree with me and why. So that's it. See you tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Bye.